Good day. Our lecture for today is about immunity. The slides comes from Biology, the Unity and Diversity of Life, 15th edition. So before we start our lecture proper, let's talk about first one of the hottest topics we have today, which is the community immunity. So in the news, when we go to the news, we always saw the DOH advertisement about vaccines, the news about the vaccination program of the government. But why is it important? What is community immunity? Why does everyone have to be vaccinated? So a vaccine is basically it's a therapeutic agent. So it elicits immunity to a specific agent of disease. For example, the COVID vaccines give us immunity to the COVID virus. So it contains a weakened, killed, or the fragmented pathogen. So these are for the old school, or rather the vaccines that we have had before. But modern vaccines right now, such as the one that we are using against COVID, those are not exactly, well, except for Sinovac. Sinovac is the weakened version of the COVID virus itself, but which is SARS-CoV-2. Now, now for the other vaccines, such as Moderna, AstraZeneca, the Pfizer vaccines, what else? Johnson and Johnson. So they do not really contain proteins. What they have, or they do not contain any part of the virus or any of the virus itself. What they have are the genetic materials that encodes for the proteins of the virus. So you have here, why is it a genetic material? So how does it confer immunity if it's not, if it's a very different type of vaccine from what we've had so far? So basically, what is really important in vaccine is for the cells of our body, for our immune system to actually recognize the virus when it enters. So how does, in order to recognize the virus, basically our adversary, they must be able to identify the proteins on its surfaces. So what the vaccine gives us is these proteins on the surfaces of these viruses. So the Moderna, the RNA, basically we call them now the RNA vaccines or the DNA vaccines. What they have are genetic materials. So these genes are inserted inside our cells, and our cells will manufacture the proteins of the virus, and they will be used for the immune system to recognize. When they see that protein, that means that protein is basically belongs to the SARS-CoV-2, which is the causative agent for COVID-19. And so for even for the first time it encounters SARS-CoV-2, since it already knows what its protein identification tag, we can say it identification tag, looks like. So they will be able to immediately elicit a response against that virus, and that is how we will get immunity. So the one of the first, actually the story of the vaccine is from the smallpox, is from the disease of smallpox. So the vaccine for smallpox was discovered when it was recognized that dairy maids who got cowpox do not get smallpox. So the story goes that the English physician Edward Jenner showed that being injected with a liquid from the cowpox sore conferred the immunity to a smallpox. So the reason why cowpox, they were using cowpox sore there versus the smallpox, but they are different. But because these two viruses, although they cause different diseases, they are closely related. So basically, their proteins on the surfaces are very similar to one another. So having one automatically allows our cells to be able to identify the other. Basically, that's how the story goes. Although during the time of Edward Jenner, where the Western world was still trying to get around, or rather still on the verge of recognizing these vaccines. Actually, the term vaccine comes from vacca, which is the cow. Hence the basically because it comes from the cowpox. But anyway, during the time of Edward Jenner, where they first had that trial, it was actually being used for several years, or for quite some time in the Persian Empire. Actually, it's the Ottoman Empire. If I remember correctly, it's the Ottoman Empire at that time. So in the Muslim community, they have been using cowpox pass to confer immunity against smallpox. So let's move on to our actual lesson. So our immune system is actually a very complicated system. So how our immune system protects us, basically we call it an integrated response. Integrated responses to the threats, because there are many different aspects of this response, this defense mechanism. So immunity, which is an organism's capacity to resist and combat infection. So the mechanisms evolved for identifying substances as self or non-self. So what is the most important in the immune response is for our immune system to identify what is our cells, the self, versus our enemies, which is the non-self. So pathogen-associated molecular patterns, or PAMPs, are recognized by the immune receptors. That's why we need the vaccines, because the vaccines gives us those pathogen-associated molecular patterns for that the immune receptors will recognize. So the antigen is the molecule that is recognized as the non-self. So the binding of the cell's receptors to an antigen triggers the immune response. So physical, chemical, and mechanical barriers prevent most pathogens from entering the body. So we have our innate immunity, which is a set of immediate general responses. So they also trigger, this innate immunity also triggers the second line, which is the adaptive immunity. So that adaptive immunity is tailored to specific pathogens previously encountered. So in terms of response, they respond slowly. So we have two types of adaptive immunity. It's the antibody-mediated and the cell-mediated immunity. So here is a surface of our tissues, and then you have here your basically your pus cells on the surfaces. Okay, so these are the features of the innate and adaptive immunity. So in terms of response time, the innate immunity has a very immediate response, whereas our adaptive immunity kicks in after about a week. So there is a time lag for the adaptive immunity, because first they must assess the threat and find a proper response to it. So the usual time for them to actually kick in is about a week. That is why when we have the flu, it usually lasts for about a week, because that's how long it takes for our adaptive immunity to actually kick in and kick the ass of the viruses. So in terms of antigen recognition, they have the innate immunity have around 1,000 pumps, while you have for the adaptive immunity, they have billions of potential antigens. And these antigens, one of the reason why it takes quite long is because they have to basically it's called that's why they call adaptive immunity. They need to identify first the antigen, and then find a proper antibody, or be able to actually they study the antibody in the cell analogy. They study the antibody to find a way to properly fight it. So in terms of specificity, the innate immunity is a general response. So whether it's a virus, whether it's a helminths, it's a parasitic worms, whether these are bacterial infections, so it's a general response. Whereas adaptive immunity, they respond to specific pathogens that triggers our adaptive immunity. So if our immune system already knows about this pathogen, it really won't need a week to actually mobilize. It just needs a faster time. That's why we want to have vaccines. Because if it takes a week for our adaptive immunity to learn about the enemy and then find a proper response to it, sometimes that week is too long, that the system itself becomes too weak, too compromised to actually fight it out. And hence, the system might actually die if it's a fatal disease. Where that is why for having a vaccines gives our adaptive immunity a lead time to actually know about the enemy, so that even when they first encounter it, they will know immediately about it. So they won't really take a week. So in terms of persistence, there's no persistence for the innate immunity, because they just need they are of an immediate response. So they really doesn't need to remember any of the enemies that we have. But for the adaptive immunity, it's a long-term persistence. So basically, these are the memory cells. The immunity, our immune system must have a memory of the pathogens that we have encountered since our childhood. So that's the long-term adaptive immunity. So white blood cells, or also called the leukocytes, participate in both the innate and adaptive immune responses. So they circulate in the blood and lymph. They are phagocytic. So that means they engulf or they eat the pathogens. They secrete and respond to chemical signaling molecules. These are the proteins and the cytokines. In fact, one of the most basically our immune system, or rather our leukocytes and immune cells, they secrete a large variety of different signaling molecules. Uh, Actually, it takes a whole field to actually study those signaling molecules, how they are triggered, which one is triggered for what responses. Basically, they are the most talkative and the most eloquent. One of the most talkative and one of the most eloquent systems of the body. So they can process and present the antigen. And they have different types of leukocytes specializing in different tasks. In fact, it really is a challenge to actually identify which is which. Because we cannot look at under the microscope and say, this is neutrophil, this is basophil. No, it's not. Sometimes it's a bit different. For example, macrophages and monocytes, basically they are the same, but because they were found in different parts of the body, they were thought to be different molecules, but really they are not. So here is integrated response to the threat. So these are some of the leukocytes that we have. So let's zoom in for a bit. Okay, so we have the neutrophil, which is the most abundant white blood cells. It circulates in the blood and migrates into the damaged or infected tissues, where it participates in inflammatory response by degranulating. So when you say degranulating, so if you look inside the neutrophil, you see the violet particles inside. So basically, they release them. And that sends a signal that initiates a response as well, and other cascade of processes. And then we have the macrophage. The macrophage starts out as circulating monocytes that enters damaged tissue and differentiates here. So it's the major phagocytic cell that presents antigen. So macrophages are actually large molecules that engulfs the pathogens. You have the dendritic cells. It's called dendritic because, well, basically they have some roots-like appendages. So they start out as circulating monocytes that enters the damaged tissue and differentiates. So major antigen-presenting cell that is also phagocytic. Then we have the eosinophils that circulates in the blood, migrates into damaged or infected tissues, where it participates in inflammatory response. So the granules contain enzymes effective against multicellular parasites. So basically, eosinophils are like neutrophils, but they specialize in parasites. Basophils, they circulate in the blood, migrates into damaged or infected tissues, where it participates in the inflammatory response by also the granulating. And then we have also the mast cells. These are anchored in tissues and participates in inflammation and allergies, again by the granulating. So when we say the granulating, those granules that you see inside, those violet specks, they release them. So these contain the signals that will be released to initiate the response. And then for the lymphocytes, which carry the adaptive immune response, we have the B cell, the only type of cell that produces the antibodies present in antibody-mediated adaptive responses. We have the T cell. We have several types of T cell, and they play a central role in all adaptive immune responses. And then we have the natural killer cells. These ones specialize in killing cancer cells that are undetectable by other white blood cells, because the cancer cells are the self cells. They are our own cells that just become mutated. So most of our immune cells cannot be able to realize that they no longer are friendly cells. So they are our inner enemies. So only the natural, not exactly only, but it's up to the natural killer cells to actually detect them. And just a trivia, did you know that the NK cells become activated or energized whenever we laugh? So basically, laughter actually activates our immune system. It's actually a proven fact. So let's talk about the surface barriers. So yeast, protozoa, and bacteria exist in the thousands to billions on and in the body. So it's basically in our environment, even inside our own body. So the normal flora, microorganisms that typically live in human surfaces, including the digestive and respiratory tracts. The body provides the organism with stable living environment. So organisms deter more dangerous species from colonizing. So basically, our normal flora not only lives on us, it's actually a symbiotic relationship with us because it provides us with benefits. It deters the dangerous species from colonizing. in or on our bodies. So it also gives us a stable living environment. In fact, some of the essential nutrients that we need comes from them. And then as part of the microbiota, they are only helpful on the body surfaces. So basically, when they enter, sometimes they do not really. Basically, their location also matters. So the microbiota in our gut is fine, but when that microbiota enters our bloodstream, it's no longer fine. Okay, so when different types of normal flora enter body tissues, they can cause acne, dental plaque, pneumonia, ulcers, meningitis, cancers of the colon, stomach, and intestines, or even inflammation. So basically, the location also matters. So here is a biofilm community in a chunk of a human dental plaque. So they find 6 different genera of oral bacteria as seen in the different colors. So each tiny dot or rod is a single bacterial cell. So this is basically a micrograph sketch of that from the dental plaque. And then this is from the toothbrush bristles scrubbing plaque on the surface of the tooth. So basically it removes the dental plaques on. It helps remove the dental plaques on the tooth. So it scrapes off. So the blood and tissue of healthy people are typically free of microorganisms. They are sterile. They should be sterile for if you are a healthy person. So surface barriers remove normal flora from entering the body's internal environment. So basically, what are those surface barriers? So we have our skin and our mucus. So the mucus contain lysozyme, which is an enzyme that can kill bacteria. So swallowed microorganisms are typically killed by the gastric fluids in our stomach. So lactate produced by Lactobacillus species, they help keep vaginal pH too low for bacteria and most fungi to actually tolerate. So it keeps the pH of that area low or acidic. So here are some examples of surface barriers. So we have biological, physiological, and anatomical surface barriers. So for the biological surface barriers, these are the established populations of the microbiota. For the physiological surface barriers, they are our secretions. So the sebum, the other waxy coatings, basically sebum in our sweat, so oily sweat. So low pH of urine, the gastric juices, urinary and vaginal tracts, lysozyme. So these are physiological barriers. And then for the anatomical barriers, these are the anatomical structures. The epithelia that line the tubes and cavities, such as the gut and in the eye sockets, the skin, the mucus, the broom-like action of the cilia, the flushing action of the tears, saliva, urination, and diarrhea. So here is our skin surface, which is made up of layers of dead cells before the actual living tissue. Okay, so that's it for this part of the lecture. We will continue on with the next part.